In today's video, we're using an electric tile cutting tool. This is a great solution for thick mosaic materials. I'll show you how to thin down glazed brick, but it works for lots of other mosaic materials too. Let's get to it. Welcome back, and if you're new here, my name is Julie. And on this channel, we talk about tips, tricks, tools, adhesives, materials, and specific mosaic projects, all to shorten your learning curve when it comes to creating mosaic art. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please consider subscribing. So today's video is the result of working with mosaic materials that were too hard and too thick for me to cut by hand with traditional mosaic cutting tools. I'll talk a little more specifically about the materials I'm working with a little later in this video. So the tool I'm using today is called a wet saw. But first I want to briefly go over what a wet saw is and the problem with my particular mosaic materials and the solution that I came up with. Don't worry, I'm not going to go over the nitty-gritty inner workings of a wet saw, but I did want to discuss what it does and how it might help you in the future. A wet saw looks like a table saw or a miter saw, except it has special features which allow it to cut tile. Now, wet saws can range from $100 to over $2,000, and some sit on a table, and some, like mine, come with a stand or legs. The unique thing about a wet saw is that you're able to precisely cut hard surfaces such as stone, tile, and brick with a very smooth cut, no matter how hard your material is, without breakage or cracking of the material. And the reason it can do this is because there is water constantly being pumped onto the blade as well as the surface of your material. And that water is keeping everything cool. So the blade doesn't have teeth, it's a diamond blade, and it's not serrated. So, like I said, you can get a really smooth cut no matter how coarse or rigid your material is. And the bricks that I'm cutting, they're pretty coarse. I know a wet saw can be pretty intimidating. Trust me, I go through a whole mental thing when I use one. But as long as you keep your hands away from the blade, you'll be just fine. It's actually a really exciting tool to work with, and it certainly can help you out if you're in a situation like I am, where I've got this really thick material that I need to be able to break down with normal hand cutting tools. So this is the material I'm working with. These brick tiles were sent to me by a client, and I'm in the very early stages of creating a multi-piece commission, and the only rule or restriction the client had was that each mosaic I created needed to include pieces from these bricks. These bricks are super thick. I think they're gorgeous with their stunning olive green background and light blue splotches. They remind me of batik fabric my mom uses in quilting. They're 1/2 inch thick, terracotta with a hard glaze. Hand tools won't open wide enough to fit them, and even if they did, it would take massive hand strength in order to cut them down. So in comes my wet saw to save the day. There are some challenges with this. Now, I can't cut the tiles too thin or the terracotta will disintegrate. So I've got to cut them thick enough to avoid that, but also I need them to be thin enough so that I can at least use compound tile nippers to cut down the bricks and shape them for my mosaic work. So in other words, I need to cut down some of the terracotta or thickness on the back side of these bricks, the unglazed part. But as you can see, there's a fine line between how much I can take off in order to maintain the body of the bricks so that they're usable for me to cut and shape. Another challenge is that my wet saw allows for a 3-inch high item to be cut before it bumps into the motor that's coming down. and these tiles are 3 3/4 inches high when they're turned up on their sides. So I needed to first cut the bricks long ways in half, and then each half stand it up on its side and run it through the wet saw. This was so that I could get rid of a lot of the bulkiness on the back side of the brick. Let me show you how I did this. I used the ruler on the wet saw to line up the guides so that my brick would cut in half long ways. This was the first cut that I made to all of the bricks. Although I'm cutting the bricks long ways, it's a fairly quick process because the tiles aren't very thick, comparatively speaking to when I put them up on their sides. Next, I moved the guides and put the bricks up on their sides and ran those through the wet saw. This cut definitely took longer. I was cutting down the entire length of the brick. You definitely want to wear protective eyewear and a dust mask. There's lots of spray going on once the material you're cutting makes contact with the blade. It's like a spa treatment for your hands with all the wet and grittiness going on, yet it's not. It's super messy. I used a shim, which is a cheap piece of thin wood, to guide the bricks through the saw to make sure they stayed in place. This not only kept the brick right where I wanted it, but it also allowed my hands to keep their distance from the blade. And the result is a 1/4 inch thick brick that I can easily cut with compound tile nippers. Perfect. Question of the day, let me know in the comments if you've ever used a wet saw, and if so, what material did you cut down? Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up as it really does help my channel, and subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification so you never miss a single upload, and let me know in the comments if there's something you'd like me to cover in a future video. I'll see you soon. Bye. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Let me start that one over. Wet saw to the rescue. To the rescue. How gorgeous are these? They're so gorgeous. Oh my goodness. They are beautiful. And look how thin I got them. Yes. Can't cut them by hand. Oh my gosh. If you're looking for more mosaic inspiration, you can check out one of these two videos. Until then, see ya. Bye.